So today I thought I could talk a little bit about the topic of fulfillment. And a certain Spanish saying has been playing in my mind that carries a lot of wisdom with it. And so in Spanish, you would say, dime de qué presumes y te diré lo que careces, which roughly translated means, tell me what you brag about, and I'll tell you what you lack. I always thought that was quite an interesting little turn of phrase because in the world we live in, there's all this emphasis on external acquisition of things and people and experiences and so on. Incidentally, before I get on with this, we thought we had become non-materialistic because we had found that buying experiences instead of buying things was a huge step forward. And though it is more subtle, it's still an accumulation of sensory experience, or what Lacan would call jouissance, right? Enjoyment of the senses. So for spiritual purposes, it doesn't make much of a difference, right? It does give you a richer life on the human level, of course. But anyway, I digress. So what's interesting about it is in common wisdom, we would think that building a good life for ourselves creates fulfillment. And what this saying tells us is, though it helps, it is not necessarily the case. And it goes to why we're doing things. And that brings me to another huge misconception that is going on out there, which is don't listen to what people say, watch what they do. Right? What they do tells you what they really are about. But it's not there either. You see, everything that we do or avoid doing can come from the right place or the wrong place. So take having kids, for example, right? Now, someone might be avoiding kids because they are afraid of responsibility. They are avoiding responsibility, right? So now that would be the wrong, or rather not the most wholesome place to come from. In other words, you want kids, you want a family life, but you're stalling, you're procrastinating, and you're in essence chickening out of the whole thing. Now, take the person who decides to have kids and they do so because they're afraid to age and be lonely, or they're afraid of not living up to their parents' expectations. Now that person went for the opposite decision, but they still did it for the wrong reason. So intention is paramount, and action is the next best indication. And by the time you get to words, you are way, way off. Why am I saying all this? Is to, in essence, come to this notion that you could have a lot of things in your life. You could have material well-being, you could have a good family life, health, physical strength, strong intellect, and those kind of things. But to the degree that you are bragging about one or several of these things, you are in essence giving away the game, in the sense that it means you're not fulfilled in that area. It means that despite your external abundance, your internal lack has not really been fulfilled by these things. And what that in essence means is that you are in need of fulfillment. And it is a fulfillment that something external cannot give to you. Now, the same goes for needing, of course, which is kind of the opposite side of the very same coin. So the person who brags simply needs in a way that is very, very yang, very aggressive, right? I have things. look at them. That proves that I don't need. But the very stating that you don't need something means that it is in your mind. And the fact that it's in your mind, the fact that it is a movement in your mind, springs from the fact that you are not fulfilled, not fundamentally so. And needing is the yin side of that coin, is the yin side of lack. So the person who feels needy goes around chasing things, desiring things, not feeling satisfied. And though their capacity may preclude that person from getting things, and even though on a practical level they are not in as good a position as the person who brags, they are both fundamentally unfulfilled. Yeah, so fulfillment has not been found for them internally, fundamentally so. And this lack of fulfillment stems from a separation from ourselves, either one or several kinks in the hose, one or several parts of ourselves that have been abandoned for painful reasons, some of them perhaps inherited, some of them perhaps learned through trauma or indoctrination, societal indoctrination, or the family system in which we grow. And which makes it so that there are parts of ourselves that we need to disown in order to survive and get on with people around us, especially our caregivers and authority figures. The moment you have disowned a part of yourself, there is lack of fulfillment immediately present. And the way this will express itself will be either, as I said, in a yin kind of way, someone who cannot get what they want and keeps chasing it but is never fulfilled, or a yang kind of way, someone who can get what they want and goes around bragging about it and never getting in touch with deeper needs that cannot be satisfied through external things and circumstances. So the rift or the separation that comes from self-abandonment is ultimately not fulfilled or cannot be healed through externals. Whenever you rely on externals, you end up either needing them or bragging about the fact that you have them, which, as I said, indicates that the fundamental lack has not been healed. And so our only real choice is to go within and experience the sense of lack. And this is not as tricky or strange as it sounds. It is very easy to experience if we take the inroad of the things that we feel that we need or that we're bragging about that keep revolving in our head in the form of overthinking with a sprinkle of anxiety on top of it all. And we allow ourselves to investigate, what does this represent for me? What are the qualities of the things that I believe I need? Or what are the qualities that I'm bragging about? Yeah. So if I'm bragging about, say, being very successful in business, for example, yeah, or having a lot of contacts, or being very shrewd. Now, if I keep bragging about this, well, the question you want to be asking, so this isn't the question of being yang, being aggressive in your neediness, is, what is it that I'm trying to portray towards the world when I brag this way? Am I trying to portray that I am very autonomous, for example, that I have a high degree of autonomy, or that I have a high degree of discipline, for example, or that I am very self-assured, right? So you can do a little bit of introspection and perhaps even a little bit of journaling about, when I brag. This already takes a bit of self-awareness, of course, but if we take that as a given, When I brag, I'm trying to portray myself as having a certain quality or a certain list of qualities, and you can write those down. And then you can ask yourself the question, what would happen? How would I feel if I preclude myself from bragging about these things? If I cannot present myself as autonomous or shrewd or intelligent in business anymore, what would that feel like? And then immediately the sense of lack will start to show itself. It'll show itself in the form of a certain discomfort that we don't really want to go into. And when it comes to needing things, and by the way, this precludes basic needs such as food and shelter and the rest of it, right? So let's leave the practical aside for a moment. When we need a certain object or a certain situation, or we're chasing after a certain person, it is good to write down the kind of qualities or attributes that we are seeing in that situation, in that object or that person. What do they signify for us? What do they stand for? Apart from the person or the object itself, they carry an allure or a certain glamour, and it has a particular quality or set of qualities, such as safety or excitement, or you name it. Yeah. And then you can ask yourself, well, how does it feel if I'm asked to come to terms to the idea that I might never be able to acquire this situation, person, object, whatever. It sounds funny talking about acquiring a person, but that's how the ego sees things, right? And if you have to come to terms with something that you really want but you can't have, immediately the sense of unfulfillment and lack will start to feel ill at ease. It's like ramping up the volume and making it more clear for yourself. That's the separation. That's the part that you have disowned. Yeah, the part that was meant to fake being fun, for example, or fake being self-assured, or you name it, right? We go back to those qualities that we want to embody and that sometimes we feel that we don't have. Now, the dance that ensues once we start to recognize these qualities that feel missing, whether through bragging or needing, is an interesting dance, because once we start to feel the discomfort of the sense of I lack the capacity to be safe or be autonomous or be fun or be, lighthearted or whatever you're projecting out there. Once we feel that discomfort, the mind will try to jump in and say, well, don't feel that, right? It'll use all kinds of protection mechanisms like guilt and shame to go like, no, this is not something you should be feeling, because if you feel that, then you have to accept there's something really wrong about you. But if you try to get past that and you dance with the emotions a bit and the shame and the guilt or whatever, then the pure affect of lack will show itself. And then the mind will go, well, you lack this, and therefore, you are unsafe or unworthy of love or whatever. So it'll amp up its attacks, and it'll make you believe that you need to now come up with some sort of ruse or some sort of scheme to fix this in yourself. This is a trap, okay? And it is a trap not so much in the sense that you ought to recognize your shortcomings and work towards becoming better every day. It is a trap in the sense that the ego sees this as a zero-sum, all or nothing game, in which once that lack is recognized, you have to do something about it right now. You have to not accept yourself until this is completely solved and you are at the absolute top of your game in that area of your life. So it'll come up with these really silly things, when in reality, something felt is by a large extent fulfilled inside. And from that fulfillment, you can then, in an explorative, constructive, and a little bit more free and adventurous way, explore what it's like to make changes in that area of your life. It has been often the case with people I work with that once the lack of a certain aspect is fully felt, you start to very naturally take decisions as if that capacity had been unlocked inside, without the need for discipline, without the need for grit and determination and force, but rather because you have reconnected with a part of yourself. That part of yourself is now conveying all the information you need to know in order to act correctly. In other words, you become responsible because you have the capacity to respond. The capacity to respond to what? To information that your body is conveying to you about a certain set of circumstances. So see, disconnection makes you irresponsible because you can't feel what you should do. You can't know how you feel about things unless you're willing to feel them, you see? And that willingness is something we can cultivate, of course, but the main message, not to go into too broad a subject here, is that with our capacity to feel, we feel both fulfilled by coming in touch with ourselves once again, and capable at the same time, because capacity comes from clarity, not from force, and not from indoctrination or externally acquired information about what your boundaries should be and all this kind of business. How can you enforce a boundary if you cannot feel clearly when it's being transgressed? Or if you feel like you need to appease your nervous system because it'll give you a hard time if you enforce the boundary? You can't. So connection with your internal self is crucial in order to obtain information that you may able to develop the capacity to feel and therefore respond to things. It's very, very simple, as a matter of fact. But it's not easy, because this is, of course, a challenging path in which we need to come in contact with all these negative affects and so on. So the essence of today's video is this idea that we disconnect ourselves internally through our childhood and through trauma and family history and things of that kind. That disconnection creates a fundamental sense that we are not fulfilled. And then we go on trying through external circumstances that we chase to fulfill that sense of lack. Sometimes we chase and we cannot get, in which case we are needy. Sometimes we chase and we get, in which case we brag. But whether we are feeling needy or braggy about things, both those are yin-yang extremes of unfulfilled needs and affects that we ought to seek to reconnect with in order to live an actually fulfilling life. And so I leave you with that thought, and I am as ever curious about what you guys make of this one. So do like, share, subscribe, and leave your comments in the comment section. I'll be back with more pretty soon. Cheerio, and bye-bye.